I think third wave feminism tends to be much more pluralistic about sexuality and personal expression and, fashion choices, and much less dogmatic, which I think is great. I think third wave feminism tends to be more alert than some second wave feminists were to issues of class and race. I think third wave feminists are more engaged, tend to be more engaged with being willing to use power, like to use the media or to use the electoral process or to use consumer practices for a good outcome, which is great. Like second wave feminism tended to be kind of puritanical, like we can only be really good if we don't touch the marketplace, we don't touch the media, we don't touch, politics as usual. Should beware of being presumptuous in assuming they know that a hijab means oppression to a woman wearing it. And where did I get that from? I got it from feminists in the Muslim world saying again and again things like, you know what, we have much worse problems than this. It's much more urgent that they're burning, brides, or that, we're facing forced clitoridectomies. Like, you Westerners are so preoccupied with our wearing a headscarf, get a grip. This is, like, grow up. And many feminists I've heard from, including young women in Western Europe, and I think it's very interesting, and I was just reporting what they said. They said very intriguingly to me, as the author of The Beauty Myth, that when they wore the headscarf or modest clothing, like a hijab, they chose to do so. And these are, I'm talking about like the head of the Oxford Union, this beautiful, brilliant young Muslim woman who could have worn anything she wanted, and she chose to wear a headscarf. And she said for her, wearing a headscarf or more modest clothing made her feel freer in a Western context than wearing Western clothing, freer of objectification, freer of sexual harassment, freer of having to worry all the time about how she looked compared to fashion models. And I thought that was intriguing. And I thought it was intriguing to surface these comments because I think, we're in such deep conflict with the Muslim world right now, in the West. And one of the problems is their presumptions about what our culture means and stereotypes about Western corruption, and our presumptions about what their culture means and stereotypes about Islam. So I think it's healthy for Westerners to turn a lens on Western practices. Maybe, it's not necessarily so free to define freedom in this very reductive way we do in the West as, any kind of sexual expression, any kind of purchasing power, any kind of, secular practice. Maybe there are other ways of looking at how other people see us. And even if we don't agree with those ways, I do think that it's a very important time to be engaged in an open dialogue with with the Muslim world, and be open to hearing, Muslim women's own interpretations of what the hijab means for them. Are there many other Muslim women who think it's very oppressive? Absolutely. And I remember saying in the piece that that is true, of course.
I feel like it's an American thing that if you see a woman with a hijab, it's like a symbol of oppression.
I feel like it takes away from just you as a female being able to express.
A man tells you, like, you have to do this, and then you do it.
I feel like in some cultures they don't have a choice. My name is Adina Lekovic, and I'm the Director of Policy and Programming at an organization called the Muslim Public Affairs Council. The Quran, which is our holy book, it revealed the idea that women should cover their hair and their outward beauty, except for what they would normally leave uncovered. The vast majority of Muslim women who do cover do it in either the way that I'm wearing it, or more commonly where just their face is showing, and their neck is covered, and then they wear regular clothing. But the core idea is that it's supposed to be a symbol of modesty and a symbol of a woman's intellectual ability over her physical beauty and sexuality.
What I'm more nervous about is like leaving this safe space of the office and like going out, especially like of all places to Hollywood.
I think it's just something that's like a very obvious statement of who you are.
Perhaps if I come across another woman wearing a hijab and she looks at me like, is she really a Muslim?
The first day I put my scarf on, I was walking in Westwood, and an old lady walked towards me, and she looked at me like she knew me, and I'm thinking, where do I know her from, where do I know her from? And she comes up to me and puts her hand on my shoulder, and she says, honey, you're in America now, you don't have to wear that here. All right, so now it's time to...
Got back from lunch, and there was one guy that was kind of like intensely staring at us, but I mean, for the most part, no one did anything outrageous.
I'm on the way to the airport now. I totally forgot that I was actually going to New York tonight.
The guy sitting next to me, as an opening sentence, said, "Are you Arabic?"
About to go to dinner wearing this. I'm a little nervous to see what people will say.
I felt like the need to be weirdly smiley and weirdly nice.
I didn't really think that many people were looking at me, but then I asked Chris and my mom, and they felt like everyone was kind of looking at us.
Got the recognition from another woman in a hijab who recognized and smiled back at me, like saying, okay, sister, we're on the same mission.
We had this kind of female connection, you know. It was very sweet, and I'll never forget, the way she looked at me was like she was acknowledging me and I was acknowledging her.
When you wear a hijab, it kind of does all the talking for you. It makes the first impression for you. And so I think if people have negative connotations about women who wear hijab, then it's hard to kind of counterbalance that.
Just walking around, people would just stare at you, and it felt weird. But I feel like I've definitely done that before.
I just got kind of used to having the hijab on my head, and I forgot that it was there. So when I would see these people intensely looking at me, it was like, why are they looking at me? And I'm like, oh, because I have this on my head.
The most surprising thing was when I wore it around my friends, they didn't react to it.
As a woman, you should be able to wear whatever you want, and if that's what you want to wear, then that's what you should wear.
I like the things that it represents. If those things are being humble and being intellectual and being equal.